I used to joke that our marriage ran on habit and hot sauce. We were that couple with matching mugs, a calendar full of errands, and a shared playlist that hadn't changed in 5 years. Sam liked early mornings. I liked late nights. He fixed whatever broke. I made lists for what would. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. A reliable loop that carried us from Monday to Friday and back again. Then the loop began to feel like a noose I'd tied without noticing. It started with a reunion. Old college friends, loud laughter, and wines that didn't need corkscrews because someone had matured enough to bring a fancy gadget. We sat around a patio heater retelling the same stories we'd been polishing for a decade. Except this time, everyone slipped in updates about rekindling, open communication, trying new adventures. There was a lot of talk about staying young by doing young things, as if youth could be subscribed to monthly like a gym. On the ride home, a sentence formed in my head, rehearsed itself twice, then spilled out without permission. "I want to feel young again," I said. "Not reckless, just alive." Sam glanced over, one hand on the wheel, that careful look he wore when a problem might be solved with a wrench, or might not be solvable at all. "We can take a trip," he said. "Or try that cooking class you circled." "That's not what I mean." The words felt heavier than the leather seats. "Some of the group, they've been doing these swapping parties." Silence flattened the cabin, thick and padded. Wiper blades beat time on the windshield even though there was no rain. I heard my own voice turn into a lawyer I didn't recognize. "It's not cheating," I insisted. "It's consensual. Just a way to reset. Like changing the paint in the living room. A way to feel wanted, you know?" Sam's jaw moved once, twice. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam the brakes. "You're saying you want other people," he said, each word placed carefully on the dash between us like fragile glass. "I'm saying I want us again," I said. "This might help." He didn't answer. We drove home in a quiet that hummed. The next morning, he brewed my coffee exactly right, dash of cinnamon, splash of oat milk, and set it by the sink like always. He kissed my temple, not cold, not warm. "We'll talk tonight," he said. We didn't. Not really. A week passed. He was present, but with the volume turned down. I told myself he needed time. I told myself brave marriages did strange math and called it maturity. The invite came on a Thursday. A friend of a friend texted an address and a handful of rules typed like a menu. No phones, no pressure, no drama. Bring your own boundaries. I read it 3 times and pretended the pounding in my chest was excitement. When I told Sam, he surprised me. He didn't forbid it. He didn't plead. He listened, then nodded once, a fraction too slow. "If that's what you want," he said, "make sure your choice is one you can describe to yourself in a mirror." "I'm not sneaking," I said. "I'm telling you." "Noted," he said softly. Saturday felt like stepping through a door I'd built myself and still didn't recognize. The place was all soft lighting and expensive scent diffusers, like a spa had decided to hold a seminar on reinvention. People mingled with that breezy familiarity of adults who've rehearsed nonchalance. I stayed in the kitchen too long, pretending to be fascinated by cheese. He was there, not Sam, obviously. The him I told myself didn't matter. A man from the reunion who had messaged me twice with sentences that sparkled more than they should have. "You deserve to be adored the way you are." He was charming the way a well-made ad is charming. I let the compliment land. I let the attention coat me like something I'd earned. Nothing graphic happened. Nothing I couldn't say out loud without wincing. And yet the line I'd drawn for myself in pencil turned out to be permanent ink. It didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a room with the air taken out. When I stepped outside for air, the night looked the same as always, street lamps, a plane moving slow across the sky. But I walked to my car with a hollow that didn't used to exist. I rehearsed my story on the way home. I'd say it was just a party, that it meant nothing, that I felt alive. The word people use when they're trying to convince their conscience it's overreacting. My hands shook on the wheel. The dashboard clock glowed like an accusation. I opened our front door and stepped into a house that smelled like lemon cleaner and the faint spice of Sam's cologne. Soft music played from the living room. Our old playlist, the one with the road trip songs and the track we danced to in the kitchen after we signed closing papers. The lamp was on. The couch was empty. On the entry table, A brown box sat like a punctuation mark. No label, just my name in Sam's handwriting. Beside it, our marriage certificate, torn cleanly in two, lay under a paperweight. Next to that, my wedding ring. Smash marks turned it into a glittering, broken circle. A note was tucked under the ring, sharp black ink on white card. Tomorrow yours AP's life will change forever. AP. Affair partner. The acronym made my stomach flip. I picked up the note. My hands were colder than the paper. Part of me wanted to laugh. At the drama. At the theatricality of a smashed ring. Part of me understood this wasn't theater. This was Sam, who builds safety with his hands, delivering a message in the language I'd chosen. Decisive. Final. Sam? I called, even though I knew he wasn't in the room. No answer. The music slipped into another song that used to make me grin. Now it scraped. The box was heavier than it looked. I opened it gently, like it might hiss. Inside, layers of bubble wrap and a manila folder labeled with the precise neatness of a man who never forgets where he left the screwdriver. Under the folder, something else waited, taped shut, the kind of plastic you only see around things you sign for. I lifted the folder first. Inside, a checklist with dates, copies of text messages, the ones I'd let myself believe disappeared into night, screenshots of calendar entries with my little flower emojis, photos of a parking garage timestamp, a printout of the rules from the party that I'd sworn I hadn't saved, a copy of the prenup I'd laughed off as unromantic 10 years ago, with a fluorescent highlight through the clause that suddenly looked like a roadblock at the end of a cliff. Beneath the folder sat a thick, padded envelope from a courier service. On the outside, in that same steady handwriting, to be delivered 9:08 a.m. See instructions. The plastic-wrapped thing below it was what chilled me. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't anything dramatic. It was worse. A stack of branded folders from my AP's employer, wrapped with a rubber band. Tucked under that, an HR policy printout and a draft complaint stamped confidential. And on the very top, a small box with a return label addressed to AP's wife. Yes, wife. I had conveniently filed that detail under soon-to-be X because it made my choices easier. The box had a tidy note stuck to it in Sam's pragmatic script. Signature required. Scheduled. I set the stack down, and the room tilted again. I looked around at our ordinary life. Keys on the hook, shoes by the rug, the painting we argued over and then bought. I felt the false confidence I'd been carrying all week crack in 3 clean pieces. I tore open the courier envelope with a finger I didn't recognize. Inside were 3 sealed packets and a single page with bullet points. Process server scheduled for AP at office 9 a.m. Delivery to AP's spouse 9:15 a.m. with enclosed summary timeline. Filing with your employer's ethics committee at 9:30 a.m. per their published policy. You may wish to review page 4. Divorce petition filed at opening of court. Your copy arrives by noon. At the bottom, in smaller type, a line I read twice because my brain refused to accept it the first time. This is not revenge. This is a boundary. I sank into the chair by the door because my knees preferred gravity over pride. The music in the other room slid into a song Sam loved to hum when he replaced cabinet hinges. I remembered the day he taught me how to line up a door so it wouldn't stick, how he said, "Most problems are just misalignment. Fix the angle and it swings like it should." I looked back at the box. There was one more item buried under the folders, taped to the cardboard wall like it needed to stay upright for maximum effect. It was a pregnancy test. New in its packaging. Not mine. Not used. But a note in Sam's hand was taped across it. In case you want to feel young again, start by remembering consequences don't. I swallowed hard, breath catching in my throat. It wasn't the plastic that hurt. It was the mirror it held up to the idiot hero I'd been playing, the one who believed in clean experiments with messy people. The front door clicked. I startled so sharply the envelope rustled like a bird. Sam stepped in, calm as weather, wearing the hoodie I steal on winter mornings. He took in the scene with one sweep, me on the chair, the box open, the note under the smashed ring. He didn't look triumphant. He looked tired, like a man who'd been lifting a heavy thing alone and finally set it down. "I told you I wanted to feel young," I said, and the sentence sounded like it belonged to someone I'd never met. "You told me you wanted novelty without cost," he said softly, setting his keys on the table. "I can't give you that. Nobody can." "What are you going to do tomorrow?" I asked, hating the smallness in my voice. He nodded toward the envelope. "You already know." "You'll ruin us," I whispered. "You already did," he said. "I'm just finishing the paperwork." He went to the kitchen and turned off the music. The quiet dropped hard. "Sam," I said, the name breaking on my teeth. "Please." He looked at me for a long moment. Not angry, not kind, just resolved. "Go to the guest room," he said. "Lock the door. Sleep if you can. There's water on the nightstand. Pack in the morning. You won't be here when the first knock comes." "When the first—" My throat closed. "Process server," he said. "They come early." I stood, legs unsteady. I wanted to argue about everything all at once. The semantics of cheating, the modern idea of swapping as therapy, the unfairness of age and time and monotony. Every argument roared to the surface, all of them flimsy in the face of a man who had done his homework while I was playing pretend. At the guest room door, I turned. "What will you do after?" "Sleep," he said. "Then call my sister, then have eggs, then go on with my life." "You don't even want to talk about us?" My voice stumbled on the last word. He didn't answer with philosophy. "I wanted to," he said. "Weeks ago." I closed the door and sat on the bed in a house that no longer had a map for me. The box in the hall stayed open like a mouth. "Tomorrow, yours AP's life will change forever," the note had promised. For the first time since I said the sentence that cracked us, I believed it. Sleep didn't come. Dawn did. A thin gray ribbon bled through the blinds and painted the room with the kind of light that makes every choice look honest. At 8:52, a truck door thudded outside. At 8:59, a brisk knock startled the house awake. I held my breath until my lungs burned. Another knock. The front door opened. Voices, paper, signatures. The ordinary sounds of consequence arriving on time. I stared at the small suitcase I'd packed in the night. Jeans, sweater, toiletries. I remembered the plastic test still taped to the inside of the box and felt heat climb my face, a humiliation so clinical it almost calmed me. And then my phone lit up with an unknown number and a preview that stole all the air I had left. AP's wife. We should talk. I received a package. I stared at the phone until the words stopped moving. My throat went dry. She'd received the package, the one Sam had labeled with such precise handwriting it looked mechanical. The one meant to shatter every lie I'd told myself about control. I thought about deleting the message, pretending I hadn't seen it, pretending that if I ignored her, this entire storm might just pass. But denial had been my chosen weapon for too long, and it had cost me everything. My finger hovered, then tapped open. Her message continued, each word like a hammer strike. He confessed. He's gone. You need to see what's in the file he left behind before the police do. Police. The word didn't make sense at first. I read it again. Police. My stomach twisted. I grabbed my coat and keys, ignoring the fact that I was still in last night's clothes. Sam wasn't in the kitchen anymore. The box still sat by the door like a waiting witness. The smashed ring glinted under morning light, a cruel little mirror. Outside, the street smelled of rain and gasoline. I texted her back before I could talk myself out of it. Where? The reply came fast. The motel off Route 15, room 108. I drove without thinking. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that promises thunder but never delivers. My heart kept rhythm with the wipers as they fought drizzle. Each mile added a new layer to the dread building in my chest. When I reached the motel, I spotted her instantly, standing under the awning in a long coat, her hair tied back like she'd come from court. She looked tired, older than the last time I'd seen her. Back then, she'd been the woman Jeremy swore he'd leave for. The irony almost made me laugh. She didn't speak until I stepped closer. He's gone, she said flatly. He packed his things before dawn, but he left that. She nodded toward the open door. I hesitated, then entered. Inside, the room smelled of cologne and cheap cleaner. On the table sat a folder, thick, sealed with tape, labeled with both our names in all caps. The word copy was written across it. I tore it open, bracing for rage, scandal, anything. But what waited inside was worse. Contracts, emails, financial statements, all showing the company where Jeremy worked, and how he'd been embezzling money for years. Sam had known. He'd traced transactions, found connections, gathered proof. My stomach dropped as I read the last page, a full report ready to be sent to federal investigators that morning. "Oh my God," I whispered. She folded her arms. "He said he'd fix it before anyone saw, that you'd understand, that he could talk Sam out of it." I closed my eyes. The pieces clicked together painfully slow. Sam hadn't just been getting revenge. He'd been protecting himself and exposing them both. I sank into the edge of the bed, shaking. "He told me tomorrow my life would change. I thought he meant divorce. I thought he meant humiliation." "He meant this," she said. "He meant everything you thought you could keep separate is about to collapse." The room tilted. "What about you?" I asked. She let out a laugh without humor. "I already filed for divorce. I just wanted to warn you. The investigators will call you next. Your name's in the correspondence. You'll need a lawyer." I pressed my palms to my temples. The hum of blood in my ears drowned her voice for a moment. I could picture Sam sitting in his office, methodical as ever, sorting papers, aligning the pieces like dominoes. He hadn't shouted, hadn't sought revenge and fire. He'd done it with logic, the kind that leaves no room for emotion. "Where is he now?" I asked finally. She shrugged. "Probably wherever people go when they've already won." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face turning pale. "He really did it," she said quietly. "The authorities just came by my house. Jeremy's being investigated for fraud. It's over." I stood up slowly. The air in the room felt thinner, sharper. "No," I said, voice shaking. "It's just beginning." Because Sam had sent one more package, one addressed to me, and I hadn't opened it yet. I drove home in silence, gripping the wheel until my hands hurt. When I walked through the front door, the box still sat there, the one I'd been too afraid to finish exploring. I knelt down, tore the last layer of tape, and lifted the remaining envelope. Inside were two things: a single sheet of paper and a small velvet box. The paper had Sam's handwriting across the top. "When you read this, I'll be gone. Don't look for me. This isn't punishment. It's freedom. For both of us. I hope someday you understand that what you called youth, I called loneliness." The velvet box held my original wedding ring, not the smashed one, restored, polished, perfect. Inside, a note. I fixed it, because I don't break things just to prove they were fragile. My breath hitched. Tears I hadn't expected burned hot behind my eyes. He wasn't coming back. He'd left nothing undone, no chaos behind. Just a mirror so clean it hurt to look into it. I sank to the floor, the letter trembling in my hands. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds, its light spilling across the torn certificate and the quiet house. Tomorrow had arrived exactly as he promised. And for the first time, I understood what real consequences look like. Not fiery or loud, but perfectly, devastatingly precise. Days turned into weeks, and silence filled every corner of the house Sam once kept alive with the rhythm of his calm voice. I had thought losing him would feel temporary, that maybe time or apologies could fix what I'd broken. But this wasn't a pause. It was an ending that echoed. His words stayed with me. "I don't break things just to prove they were fragile." He had fixed the ring, not to forgive me, but to show that he could repair what I'd shattered, then walk away from it. That truth was sharper than anger. News about Jeremy spread fast. His company launched a full investigation, and within days, his name was all over the local papers. Embezzlement, ethics violations, termination. I didn't need to read the details to know Sam had planned every move with precision. Jeremy's wife filed for divorce, too. She sent me a message weeks later, short, polite, cutting. We both trusted the wrong men, but at least one of them had a conscience. I lost my job soon after. HR called me in, said my personal involvement in an ongoing legal case made my position untenable. They said it kindly, but pity and professionalism sound the same when your world collapses. I packed my desk in silence. Nights were the hardest. The house still smelled faintly like Sam. Cedar, coffee, and clean paper. Sometimes I'd find one of his sticky notes in a drawer. Grocery reminders, small sketches, little pieces of the man I'd mistaken for boring. He wasn't boring. He was steady, the kind of steady you only miss when the ground disappears. I started volunteering at a community shelter just to keep from drowning in my own thoughts. One evening, after closing, I found myself talking to a woman who'd left her husband after he cheated. She said, "Regret doesn't change the past, but it can build better walls for the next house." It hit me harder than I expected, so I began rebuilding. Not a marriage, not a reputation, just myself. Therapy, part-time work, small routines. Mornings with black coffee instead of excuses. It wasn't redemption, it was survival. Months later, a letter arrived without a return address. Inside was a postcard of a small coastal town. No words, no name, just a single pen stroke. A familiar S in the corner. I smiled through tears. He was out there somewhere, rebuilding too, just like he said he would. For the first time, I didn't chase closure. I just let it exist. The quiet in the house no longer felt like punishment, it felt like peace. The box, the ring, the torn certificate, I kept them in the attic, not as reminders of shame, but as proof of consequence. Choices once made don't vanish. They leave footprints, sometimes leading you to ruin, sometimes to understanding. I wasn't the same woman who walked into that swapping party searching for youth. I was older now, lonelier maybe, but honest. I'd finally learned what Sam had known all along. That feeling young has nothing to do with excitement. It has everything to do with integrity. And so, when people ask why I never remarried, I tell them the truth. I already met the best man I'll ever know, I just didn't realize it until he walked away.